Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club, your exclusive access to the industry's most successful leaders. These experts have closed thousands of deals, generating hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're here to share their strategies, insights, and leadership lessons that can fast-track your career. But the learning doesn't stop here. Join the Investment Banking Leaders Club at ibleadersclub.com for even more exclusive insights, leadership frameworks, and career accelerating resources and events. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck on your growth journey. I'm excited for today's episode as I'm joined by someone whose career has been all about transformation of people, organizations, and the financial services industry itself. Tanya Van Biesen is the president and the CEO of VersaFi, a purpose-driven organization with a powerful mission, which is to accelerate the advancement of women in the finance sector. Now, with over 4,000 members in Canada, VersaFi is doing critical work to drive meaningful change across investment banking, wealth management, and capital markets. Now, Tanya's journey began in sales at Procter Gamble and moved through 2 decades in executive search, where she became a global partner, leading the Canadian financial services practice at Stuart. And in 2016, she pivoted again, this time to lead Catalyst Canada, and later took on a global responsibility for engaging companies around the world to create inclusive, gender equitable workplaces. A self-described accidental activist, Tanya is a listener, an optimist, and a leader who's known for lifting others up and helping them grow. Her work today is reshaping the financial industry by focusing not just on recruitment and retention, but on long-term leadership development, workplace policy reform, and building environments where women can truly thrive. So I'm pumped to have you here today, Tanya. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks, Tanya. So why don't we start with your journey? What took you from consumer goods at Procter & Gamble to executive search and eventually to leadership at Catalyst and now, of course, at VersaFi?
Not a straight line, to be sure. So Procter & Gamble out of school, which to this day I feel very fortunate to have had that experience. Great company, great training, great sales training. Selling diapers to as many people as possible is not as easy as it sounds, but it was great training. I moved into executive search, and I owe that actually to my family. My parents had a small executive search firm, and so I learned about the business at the kitchen table, and I thought it would be interesting to trade diapers for human beings. I'd always been very interested in what makes humans tick. So I launched into that business, and I was in that business actually for a total of 23 years. And I spent most of my time in financial services. But during the time that I was in the business, I also stood up the first ever Canadian diversity practice, which was very much focused at the time on women on boards, and I would say even more pointedly, white women on boards. And that grew and truly diversified over time, recognizing the need to represent all people at the most senior levels of organizations. But that was my introduction to this work. And that really drove my passion to first go to Catalyst and then come to VersaFi.
Love that. Thanks for the intro and us understanding that journey a bit better. Why don't we jump into VersaFi? As I mentioned, the mission is really to accelerate progress for women in finance. So what does success look like for you in the organization, Tanya?
Our North Star is gender equity in finance. And that doesn't necessarily mean 50-50, but it means a long way from where we are today. So this organization is 30 years old this year. As you mentioned, we have over 4,000 members in Canada, which punches well above its weight relative to any other organization around the world. We have this huge membership of women and male allies, by the way, and we work collaboratively with companies in the sector to help them identify where there may still be barriers and where we have an opportunity to ensure that women can thrive and succeed at every level. The work that we do is really designed to ensure that the industry takes full advantage of the full talent spectrum. Women are over 50% of the population. For 30 years in North America, so not just Canada, we've been 58% of university grads. So we are a very important talent pool that is still underutilized, underleveraged, undervalued in this sector. So all of our work is to help companies understand and break down the barriers to make sure that they can seize on that talent.
Really clear. Thanks for sharing that, and excited to help get even more visibility to the great work that you're doing. If we look at the financial services, what areas show the most opportunity right now for improving that gender equality you mentioned? And where's the industry falling behind, you think?
Well, it's great we're having this conversation because I would say investment banking is still one area where women now increasingly banks are bringing in men and women, I would say 50-50 at the entry level, but then there's a real drop off. So investment banking, asset management, and wealth management are the three areas where we still have tremendous opportunity areas. And we can talk about why that is, but I would say those are the three real areas of focus.
Perfect. You're going to give me some insight into particularly the investment banking area and the opportunities that you see there.
So again, I think the industry has done quite a good job of recruiting and getting to 50-50, close to 50-50 at the entry level. What happens then when people are they've launched their careers, they're 1 and 2 years in, we start to see a big drop off. And not at that early stage, but I would say the most sensitive stage probably, Pete, is in that 5 to 7 year range. Often people start to think about having families and they start to think about how they're going to balance the very demanding work that is investment banking with having a family. So that's one area that is still difficult to navigate, and the industry hasn't changed all that much around the notion of flexibility and how we integrate that into people's work lives. The second thing is that there still is a culture that is less welcoming to women. So there is still a culture that has some undertones or perhaps overtones of sexism. Then organizations tend to be less friendly to women. And then because women are less represented, there are out groups, and those in groups tend not to include women. And within those in groups, and whether that's groups that go for drinks after work or play golf together or cycle together, they end up getting to know each other, building trust with one another. It's often groups of men, and deals get done or client work gets handed out or pitches get handed out, and women are not included in that. And so, notwithstanding the fact that men and women have, and this is shown over and over, the same level of ambition, often men are still getting the better clients, the better access to pitches. And so women say to themselves, why am I here if I'm not getting the juicy work and the interesting clients?
Perfect. Thanks for sharing the insight and really clear in those three areas. And I remember a striking stat, I think it was from VersaFi's Affinity report, which
Mm-hmm.
said that 82% of women say the expectations around parental leave are a major reason they exit the industry. And that was the first point you touched on, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, any insight on what a truly parental leave friendly investment bank could look like? And I guess why should this be a priority, not just for women, but for the entire industry?
I have that vision. We're a fair ways off from it, but I certainly have that. I think one of the challenges we have is that we still identify caregiving, whether it's parental leave or caring for elderly parents or what have you, as something very gendered. So that is something women do. That's something that men tend not to do. A great parental leave, not only policy but execution, would be that both men and women take parental leave, and it's not a women take 4, 6, 12 months and men take 2 or 3 weeks. It's that they both take meaningful parental leave. And
Mm,
so it takes away this gendered notion of being a parent. And to your point, I think it's really, really critical that organizations look at this more seriously now because younger men are keen to be engaged with their children. So they too are asking for things like, can I go on parental leave without being penalized? Can I have some flexibility in my day so I can take my kid to a soccer game or a dance class and I won't be penalized or made fun of or ridiculed by my colleagues?
mm.
These are things we are seeing amongst all of our young people.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I spoke to a lot of other female leaders about this topic, and particularly investment banking, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm.
And actually, 12 months leave or a period of leave compared to the whole career is quite little when you look at it over the span of the career. So it's interesting, and I'd love to know and see more done in that area. You talked a little bit about the cliques that could form, and obviously that impacting maybe the clients that you receive or the opportunities you receive. Any insight on how leaders within the industry today could do better having more inclusive cultural norms, let's say?
Mhm. If you're a leader in investment banking, and obviously you go to the people you trust, you go to the people that you know is going to get the work done, business travels at the speed of trust. So all of these things are so important. But I think if
Mm,
you are a leader that is looking to develop great followership and ensure that you've got the best people on your team, then one of the things you need to be looking at is who are in my go-to group. And if my go-to group is always the same two, three, four, five people, and they kind of all look the same, think the same, talk the same, maybe I should think more broadly. Who am I not speaking to? Who have I not spent some time with to pull them up in the organization? Because chances are you're overlooking some great talent and you're going to be at risk of losing them. If they made it through the recruitment process, chances are they're good, they're smart, they're capable. So why aren't you talking to them? Why are you not including them in your pitches? I mean, everybody needs reps, right? If we don't give people
mm.
reps, they're not going to succeed. If you're not giving a broader group of people reps, then you are sealing their fate. So, as a leader, it behooves all of us to look more broadly at who we're speaking to and drawing from.
That's a really good tip, isn't it? Being aware of the voices you have around you and the variety of the voices you have around you. It's a no-brainer really to build and grow yourself. I like that take. Thanks for sharing. You mentioned followership.
Mm.
I know that in our conversations, you observed the tension between that kind of lone wolf rewarded style that is so common in investment banking and what it takes obviously to build a real followership. So how do we start to shift this?
Not easy because, of course, incentives drive behaviors. I think anybody who aspires to be a good leader, and let's put that in the context of a deal-making culture, you are only going to be as good as the team that you surround yourself with, right? Your client
Mm,
demands great service, they demand immediate service, they demand all kinds of things, but no one can do that alone. So you need a great team around you. In order to get a great team around you, you need them to be smart and to work hard and to stick around. You don't want a lot of turnover on your team. So all of these things demand some depth from a leadership perspective, and it can't just simply be hammering people over the head all the time and saying, you got to work 18 hours a day and I'm going to compensate you well, and that's all, because some other investment bank can turn up and offer them that great compensation plus a little more, and then they're gone. So, what you do between compensation cycles matters. And so, the ability to start integrating into that deal culture some understanding of what does it take to make Pete tick? Pete's got several children. Does he need a little flexibility in between deals so that he can go to the soccer game or go to whatever? Understanding a little bit of that. It's amazing what a difference small interventions like that can make in someone's life and someone's perception of the company in which they work and how much that company actually cares about them. These are not big, massive things, right? At the end of the day, it's about, do I feel like I've got a good, respectful relationship? And does this person get that I need a little bit of this every now and then? Because to your point, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, again, great take, isn't it? And that personal connection and getting to know the team and really understanding what makes them tick is so important. And in the demanding industry, in the fast-paced industry of investment banking, and the way it's rewarded, as we've already talked about, does seem to get lost a little. Have you seen any other great recognition practices with the many members and corporates you're working with?
I would point to a couple of things. I will draw on some of the work that we do. We offer a suite of professional development that often leaders will use as recognition. So you see a high potential person on your team, you offer them the opportunity to get some professional development that's going to help accelerate their career. It means a little bit of extra work on their part, but it also means very clearly, Pete, I'm investing in you because I see you as the next generation of this firm. This suite of professional development that we offer at VersaFi is a great example of, I'm a leader. I can send you on whatever it may be, a 4 week course, or it may be a 1 year one-on-one coaching opportunity. And that's a real sense of like, I know you're the future, and this is how I'm going to demonstrate that to you. So that would be one thing. A second thing that I see, and I've seen it in a few investment banks, not universal, is that what are we doing between the transactions? So, how much ability to have some downtime or some flex between transactions are we giving to people, or are we requiring them to be in the office 18 to 20 hours a day, even between the deals because face time is that important. I would argue that face time is not that important. So what can we do between those deals to ensure that people can sort of level out the intensity of the year? And then the final thing I would say, and this is less on the topic of recognition and more on the topic of how do you ensure that you are hearing and seeing other people, hearing other voices. Some law firms have done an interesting thing, which is, and also deal driven, right? So not dissimilar to the investment banking culture. What they have done is they've started to literally measure who gets the work, who has the work been given out to. And so each year, a practice leader will get a pie chart that says, well, you've given this much work to Joe and to John and to Tom, and this much work to Sally and to et cetera. And then they'll do it again in the second year. And what they're trying to do is show that leader, you need to shift, if you're giving all your work over here, let's help you shift and distribute that more evenly so that we're developing all of our people. And it's a helpful visual for people to see how they're divvying up work and how they can shift that over time.
A great initiative. I haven't heard of that before. I've had a law guest on very recently, so I'll have to go back to some of my connections and
Mhm.
chat a bit about that. It's really interesting, isn't it? Just having that visibility of where it's going. And I hear a lot from leaders about be visible to the staffers, let the team know what you want to work on, where your gaps are. And
Mhm.
there's probably team members that are really good at that and others that aren't, and maybe
Mhm.
need a bit more support to get the work they need. And yeah, commitment to development. I love that. That's a really good one. And again, it shows that respect and that desire you have for that person to grow throughout the organization. And intensity between the downtime of transactions, again, really like that take. So thanks for sharing the insight. I want to just go back to another thing in Project Infinity and back to one of the reasons you shared why it's been tough for female leaders to rise. The project painted a powerful picture of the unspoken rules that still govern investment
Mhm.
banking, everything from needing to conform to that male-centric culture you
Yep.
mentioned to being penalized for flexibility. So these norms often make women feel they don't belong. That's what the report said,
Mhm.
even when they're excelling in their role. So any other thoughts on what could really break these cultural patterns down and make investment banking much more a place where women can thrive rather than just survive?
Yeah, that's such a top of mind question for me because, as luck would have it, over the weekend, I sat down with my kids and we watched again The Wolf of Wall Street. And The Wolf of Wall Street, it sounds odd, but I've spoken to many bank CEOs who have said that that movie did us no favors. Now, he was a stockbroker, so a little bit different, but that
Mm,
there is this whole culture starts well before people enter the industry. It starts at a younger age, often at the college university level, where there's a sense of I want to be, and for it's a derogatory term, so forgive me, but this is the commonly used one. I want to be a finance bro, and there's a certain
mm,
sense of what that is and what that
mm,
can look like, and all the kind of sexy things that come with that. And that is created or that is prevalent at the university level and in finance clubs, investment clubs, whatever they're called on campus. And often very few women, if any, are part of those clubs. And so it starts then and it sort of grows in its intensity as people get into the sector. So there is still that sense of there's a lot of hot shots running around, more men than women. And that's the culture stuff that needs to be broken down within the business. The women that I know that are in investment banking and have been throughout their careers love it. Like they are there
mm,
because they love it.
mm,
But there is a little bit of they've gutted it out. They've just held on for dear life. They have
mm,
fought off the sexism and all that stuff. That culture that has to be broken down. And too often in this business, if you're a big producer, but you exhibit bad behavior, banks don't get rid of you because you're a big producer, right? And so it's that trade-off of we're not going to get rid of those people that behave badly because we value too much on the client relationship side. To be honest, we're never going to break this down. So that
mm.
it's a real choice that organizations need to make. I think we're chipping away at it, but it's a very, very slow progress.
Thanks for the insight. Well, it looks like we need some new movies, all right,
We
to
need
help
some
with
new
that.
movies. Unfortunately, sex sells in Hollywood, so it's a little harder to make movies about what I'm talking about.
I can imagine, no, for sure. And again, it goes back into that lone wolf and rewarding system that you mentioned, right, with the kind of toxic behavior
Hmm.
potentially. I
And
want to talk a
maybe
little. Sorry, go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt you, but I think we've seen some impact of this. I suspect we'll see more. Is that if clients more fully understood some of this, they wouldn't tolerate it. Now, some clients will tolerate it, but we're seeing more and more women CFOs in particular. Not, I mean, there's a growth in women CEOs, but more on the CFO side, who are often divvying out work. And I do think that is one opportunity for more change. They will not tolerate this if they see it.
It's great to hear. I wanted to talk a little bit about future because I've spoken to a lot of leaders about AI, obviously not
Mm.
surprising with everything that's happening, but your take on AI and the concerns for the future of females in IB was really interesting. So what happens to the pipeline when AI disrupts that entry level banking roles and women are already underrepresented in tech? So
Mhm.
what should leaders really be thinking about with regards to that?
Yeah, so I will take both the over and the under on this. On the under, what I'm concerned about is there's some predictions that upwards of 65% of those entry level jobs will go away because AI will just take it up, right? So the associate and analyst roles won't be necessary anymore because we can just do all that comp work and all that stuff using AI. And in fact, just last week I had a meeting on the same. So the question then becomes, how do you, if you can't come in at the associate or analyst level, how do you skip up to VP Director MD? So that is my concern. And when we already are underrepresented in those junior roles, it's just going to create more and more of a gap as you become more senior. That's the very negative view. The more positive view is that if AI is doing a lot of the rote work, then what is it that you are really needed for when you're facing off with clients is the ability to connect with clients and develop those client relationships, the ability to actually communicate, the ability to provide insight into an industry or into a transaction. And those are things arguably that women excel at. And I don't think it's exclusive to women, but women excel at. It's the analytical skills, it's the human interaction and behavior skills that I would say we bring a lot to the table on. What I don't think anyone has figured out is if we eliminate a lot of jobs at the bottom, how do you get to the top? And what are the new jobs that are going to need to be created in order to train someone up? And to your point, women are still underrepresented in tech, so data scientists, prompt engineers, all of those things. There's a lot of work that needs to be done over there. And I would say, as a leader, you're going to have to be super attentive to who you're hiring on the tech side, because if there's a huge inequity there in who you're taking in, we will probably go backwards at the leadership level if we're not careful.
So it sounds like, thanks for the insight, first of all. Again, really interesting take and not one that I've discussed before with another leader. So
Mm.
I love that. And I'm interested, I guess you talked about the flip side. There must be a fair few opportunities then if women lean into AI and technology and data science. So do you see recommendations there or ideas?
Very similar. So
Yeah.
many of the ideas from a leadership perspective, but again, it starts at a younger age. Currently, we are, at least in North America, it's not the same in Asia and in Eastern Europe, but in North America, there are too few women that are choosing computer science as the place that they start their university career. I would say engineering writ large, but some of these very data science, technology oriented studies, fewer women are choosing those. And
Mm.
so I do think one of the things that banks need to do is really push down on these universities. What are they doing to attract more women into these programs? Because without that, the banks will be stuck choosing from a talent pool that continues to be imbalanced. So I do think there's a real conversation to be had between the banks and the schools from which they recruit to ensure that the schools are doing their part.
Yeah, super interesting. Again, thanks. Really interesting topic. I whilst I've got you, your wealth management knowledge there,
Mm,
again, I've had a lot of different leaders on the show, lots of different industries, but not so much on the wealth management front. And
mhm,
I know you've spoken about the massive transfer of wealth that you saw from men to women
mhm,
coming in the years ahead.
mhm.
Why is this such a pivotal moment, in your opinion, for the industry? And what should firms be doing now to prepare for that?
So we've seen this coming over a long period of time, but with a generational shift, here are the hard facts. Women live longer than men, and sadly, more and more are divorcing. And so, through both of those facts, more wealth is transferring to women. And again, studies show over and over that when women take on the family wealth, they do a couple of things. One, they want to manage it somewhat, if not substantially differently than their spouse did. And two, overwhelmingly, not exclusively, but overwhelmingly, they prefer to work with a female advisor. So we've seen this sort of tsunami coming, and the industry has done work to recruit more women wealth advisors, investment advisors, financial planners, private bankers, kind of that
Mm.
whole realm, but has not done it to the degree that we need to. And then if you layer on top of that the fact that there is a massive retirement of advisors coming, so there won't even be enough advisors of any gender to manage all of the wealth that is accumulating. So this is a real moment in time, but we need to recruit more women into the business. And the work that we've done there suggests that one, there's not a high awareness among young women to go into this sector. And two, they are not keen on the at-risk compensation that comes with being an investment advisor.
Are you seeing that the transition is happening from investment banking into wealth management more and more?
I see a lot of senior leaders in wealth management seeking to recruit investment bankers. And I think it's still it's a great place to recruit from, would be the first place I would go to, but it's early days to see how successful that's going to be.
Watch this space. Thanks for the
Yeah.
insight.
Which is
I
not great for
wasn't.
the investment banks, obviously, but
No, no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I want to dive more into your leadership style. You've been in the industry a long time. You're a
Mhm.
great leader. You described yourself, as I mentioned in the intro, as a listener and naturally optimistic person. So how have these qualities helped you lead?
I love people, so I find it easy to listen to other people, which is why I spent a long time in executive search, where you're always getting people to tell you their stories. So I find that to be easy, and I do try and do that. I mean, now that I'm in an organization with 4,000 members, we're always listening to what they have to say and what their needs are. And then it would be impossible to do this work if you were not optimistic, because social change, cultural change, behavioral change takes a long time to actually shift. And so, in order to be patient and persistent through that shift, you have to remain optimistic about both the power of people and organizations to engage in that change. So yeah, I'm just thankful that I'm able to do that.
Keep laying the groundwork. I love it. And we talked about how recognizing and celebrating team members, examples you've seen in investment banking. But what about you as a leader? How do you recognize and celebrate your team?
When I was thinking about this question, Pete, I feel like I don't do it enough. We probably never do it enough. And in our case, in a not-for-profit, we don't have all the levers that an investment bank would have. So at our level, we have a biweekly call. We always talk about our values and how people are displaying our values, the work that they might have done in the past week that actually exemplifies our values. We try and bring people together as often as we can. So those are the things that we do. Again, for organizations that have more levers in the way of compensation and recognition programs, I would say you can't do it enough with your high performers. And they are generally small interventions. They don't have to be big, grandiose things to make people feel valued.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have a values program here at Outram, and we have a platform where you can recognize successes of any team member based on values. So it
Mm.
really brings it back to the core values. Super powerful. That peer to peer recognition, not just down from leadership, is really key. So, yeah, thanks for the insight.
Mhm.
Any other practices that our aspiring leaders today listening could learn from you?
Yeah, probably a few. I'll start maybe at the simple level. One is think about how you want to be led, right? Assume that the people that you're working with are just as ambitious as you are, and that this notion of one gender is less ambitious than the other has just proven to be patently false. So assume that everybody is there and wants access to the same great deals and clients that you want access to. And if you think about that as a starting point, hopefully it'll guide you to do the right things. And while this business is very competitive, The most important thing is to be competitive outwardly as opposed to with your colleagues, because that's not going to win the day. And then as you become more senior, I think there is a very simple weekly exercise that you can do to jot down who have I heard from, who haven't I heard from, who speaks up in meetings, who doesn't speak up in meetings, who do I actually need to pay a little bit more attention to or draw out or find out a little bit more about. And it's probably somewhere between 5 to 10 people that you should be tracking all the time. And if you just are not hearing from or asking perspective to get perspectives from, then try and see what happens, because you may actually be missing some great talent. And then the final thing I would say for the male leaders out there is you have a real opportunity to be an ally and to make sure some of these underrepresented voices can be represented. So find ways to lift those people up, find ways to talk up their experience and their contributions in rooms where they are not present, so they get more access to the limelight than they might otherwise get.
Makes a lot of sense. I think really just being intentional, isn't it? So much more intentional, taking the notes, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understanding who you're hearing from, who you're not, and being that ally, as you mentioned, lift them up. And I think it goes back to that lone wolf. If you're taking the successes as your own versus the teams, then there's
Yeah.
probably something going wrong, right? So
Yeah.
great advice for those aspiring leaders today. Believe it or not, we're coming towards the latter stages of the interview, but I've still got quite a few questions to ask. So what's your hope for the future of finance? What gives you confidence that we are on the right path?
So my hope for the future is that this industry will, one, accelerate progress, and not, although not unimportantly, not because it's the right thing to do, but it truly is the smart thing to do. There is a wealth of talent out there, very ambitious women who want to be in this business, and the only thing they're asking for is the same access to opportunity. They know they need to deliver every day, so they're not looking for a handout, but they do want a level playing field. So my sincere hope is that we will double down on that work, because this is all about talent. Have you opened up your talent aperture? If you have, you will win. If you choose to populate your team with 50% of the population versus looking at 100% of the population, that's your choice. But to me, that's a bad business decision. So that is my hope for this business. And in a world where it could not be more uncertain and competitive than it is today, the companies that really recognize that, I think, will win.
That's great. The war on talent is
It's a lot.
fiercer than ever, right? So it's a no-brainer. Like what you're sharing makes so much sense. So I really hope many of the listeners take something away and look to help with your hope and build that
Mm-hmm.
future we're looking for. I'm a big believer that leaders are readers, and I guess it doesn't just have to be books these days, right? With all the different resources we have, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd love if you could share a few things with our audience that have had an impact on you.
Yeah, so I do love to read. A book that has stuck with me for a long time, which is not immediately relevant to the work that I do, although very relevant to leadership, is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson
Okay.
Mandela. So,
Yeah.
anyone that's not read it, it's a fantastic read. And then, because I suffer from the recency effect, I would say the book that I'm reading right now is a great read. The title of the book is The Personal Librarian, and it is the story of J.P. Morgan's personal librarian. So, set in the early 1900s, when he was building his personal library, he hired a woman to be his advisor on which books should populate the library, and it's a fantastic read.
Amazing. I haven't heard of that one. We'll pop both of those in the notes, and I'll include the reports that we've mentioned
Mm-hmm.
throughout the interview as well. So those that are interested to delve a bit deeper in the affinity report. If you could go back to your younger self starting out in the career again, what piece of advice would you give yourself now, knowing what you know?
What would I say? I would say that the more you can do, if you situate your career in how you are serving others, I think the rest will take care of itself. And by the way, that can still be done in a very, very competitive business. If you think about it in a client context, what are you doing for the client versus what are you doing for yourself? I think so much will take care of itself. And the same would be true for what are you doing for the people that report to you or your colleagues. Um, And then the second thing I would say to myself is it is a marathon, not a sprint. So often we are caught up in the sprint. What do I have to do today, this week? How am I going to be compensated this year? And you have to remember that this is a 40 or 50-year game.
Yeah, great advice. And For the young female listeners we have who are maybe very early in their investment banking or financial services career,
Mm,
any final words of advice for them?
yeah. Lots of advice, but the two most important things I would say is find a great company where you know they will invest in you and alongside your male colleagues, but they will invest in their young people, number one. And number two, network. Network within the organization, network outside of the organization. Find and make friends. These people are going to be the community that lifts you up on the bad days and cheers you on the good days. But we all need to have a network of people inside and outside our organization that are going to be our personal kitchen cabinet and advisors as we go through our careers. So do make the time to get out and meet people in the sector. You will not regret it.
Well, a great point, and couldn't agree more. The networking angle comes up again and again from leaders. So,
Yeah.
well, a
Yeah.
great way to end this. Tanya, I know how busy you are. I just want to say a big thank you for being with me today. And of course, we love the work that VersaFi are doing. We're big supporters of the firm and continue doing that great work.
Thank you, Pete. It was great to be here. I appreciate it very much and lovely to see you.
This episode of the podcast was brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club. And to keep leveling up your career, join the club at ibleadersclub.com for exclusive insights, leadership strategies, and career growth resources straight from the industry's top professionals. I want to say thanks to our key partner, Outram, the global leader in financial deal gifts, awards, and recognition, for their ongoing support of our mission to empower both aspiring and senior investment banking leaders. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, best of luck on your growth journey.